and I started hearing like a groaning noise. I stood up from where I was as I was sitting down, and I stood up and I looked at the car, and the car was on this like crazy weird angle. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? So this is the ABS pump that saved my life, and this one screw here, this screw saved my life. Okay, so I'm just making this video because I just had an accident with my BendPak QuickJack. As a disclaimer, I am not saying don't buy one of these things. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just going to be relaying my personal experience with it and what's just happened to me. I just thought we'd go for a walk around and try to show you what's actually happened, show you the carnage. The car from here doesn't actually look that bad, but when you get closer, it's pretty bad. We have a massive dent above the door. We have a wing mirror that's been busted off. You can see there's a lot of like dents and scratches up and down the door. Pretty much every panel on this side has been damaged. So as you've just seen the footage of, my car has fallen off the BendPak QuickJack that I purchased back a couple of months ago. I guess I'll tell you my story and you can make up your own mind as to whose fault this is. But anyway, I thought I'd talk about like why I chose BendPak in the first place. And I guess the main reason was I watch a lot of YouTube videos on people fixing cars. My favorite channels are like M539 Restorations. I think Stretton's a freaking genius. I also like Alex from Legit Street Cars. I also watch channels like I Do Cars, Tavarish, mostly kind of like technical, do-it-yourself kind of guys. I like all that stuff. And it always seems as though these guys are sponsored by a company called BendPak. They supply all the lifts to these guys. So it seemed like a legit company. I thought I would go and buy one of their products, which is called a BendPak QuickJack, which is like a semi-mobile, a hydraulic hoist that you can stick under any car. I got the big one. I got their biggest one, the EXT range. It's supposed to be for if you have like a large four-wheel drive. So I thought it'd be more than enough for what my needs are. So my current goal was that I've got a Maserati 3200 GT that I was looking to basically do an entire new suspension, like control arms, everything. That was the goal. And as you can see, the car has fallen on its belly and probably won't be receiving those parts anymore, I guess. So the Maserati 3200 GT, it's the one with the boomerang headlights. So I think it's a really beautiful car. I bought this thing back. There's a pretty big backstory to this car. This car has been in my family for 12 years now, since 2011 when I bought it. It's a 2001, so we were the second owners and we bought it from a dealer. It's a pretty interesting spec. It doesn't have the crazy skyhook suspension, it's just got normal suspension, so that really drew me to the car in the first place. It also has a factory fitted spare tire, and none of these cars have spare tires. It's the only one I've ever come across that has a spare tire, and it also has, I think it's factory fitted, but it's at least dealer fitted cruise control. My ex-wife and I chose that car because we felt as though we had done pretty well financially, and we felt as though we needed a special occasions car, I guess you could say. We had been building up a bit of a car collection, a small car fleet. This car was, I can't remember, like the 6th car we had or something like that. So far I had an R34 GTR V-Spec. I also had a Peugeot 205 GTI, which is an absolutely beautiful car, one of my favorite cars that I've ever driven ever. What else did I have? I also had a Nissan Stagea RS4, which was a really good car. I've been trying to get that car back, but I think it's been crashed. Oh, I also had a E55 AMG, the W210. I had that as well. Now, I want to go on record as saying I love Maserati. I love the brand. I've always loved the cars, especially the old ones, but they are really, really problematic to own. And this car in particular, I'm not going to say it was a lemon, but I will say that my ex-wife and I really came down to thinking that this car was damn cursed. So I would have to say, I'll show you some of the invoices that we paid, but this car it was unbelievable how much money this car chewed up trying to keep it in one piece. I mean, it needed a new gearbox, it needed a whole bunch of engine work, a whole bunch of problems with electrics, and anybody who's owned a Maserati or any kind of like old Alfa Romeo or anything like that, you know what I'm talking about. It was like the car had a mind of its own a lot of the time. So, you know, I use the analogy that this car was like, it was like being in a abusive relationship with a toxic girlfriend. Like, the good parts were absolutely amazing. I had some absolutely amazing road trips in the car. On the downside, you never knew if you were going to make your destination or not. We had constant check engine lights. The car had a couple of accidents. We had a rear ender, we had a front ender. Somebody broke into the car. The car just seemed to be like this magnet for bad luck. So it really started making me think, this car is cursed. So anyway, in 2016, my ex-wife and I, we got divorced. So in between 2016 and 2021, she had that car as her daily driver and basically drove it into the ground pretty much. I think the final straw for her came when she had to do a full belt service on it, and she took it to the dealer, the Maserati dealer here in Perth, and they charged her somewhere around about $8,000 to do the service. And I think at that stage she just went, that's it, this is ridiculous, I've had enough of this car, I just need to get rid of it. I had always told her, like, if you ever want to sell that car, please give me first right of refusal. So she said, do I want the car? And I said yes. I really don't know what I was thinking, but that car just, I don't know, it has an emotional hold on you that most other cars just don't have. So I ended up buying it for her. I bought it from her at a really cheap price. It was a really cheap price, I have to say. I won't tell you what I bought it for, but it was really, really cheap. But the car did have a hell of a lot of problems that needed to be fixed. It needed all new control arms, it needed all new bushings throughout everything, including the sway bars and everything, all new bushings. It needed new shocks, it needed a steering overhaul, it had no air conditioning, the compressor had packed it in, and also one of the main things were it had a suspected blown head gasket. Anyway, the main problem with this car is that control arms. The control arms on a Maserati 3200 GT, the ball joints in them are attached to the control arm, and it's like a bound unit. They're one piece. Like, you can't just take a ball joint out and just throw a new one in when they get worn out. You have to buy the whole control arm. When you need to replace a ball joint, you have to replace the whole control arm. Now, the problem is there's no spare parts. Maserati don't support this car at all in any way, so there's no new spare parts being made. And Euro Spares want, for one, they want in the vicinity of about $3,000 Australian. I really needed 8, because it's double wishbone suspension. So it's going to cost me in the realms of about $20,000 to replace the control arms and the ball joints. So I came across this company who offer a different solution called VPS, then they're in Slovenia. And so the whole idea was I was going to give my car to the mechanic, he was going to take off the control arms, and then we were going to ship them off to Slovenia and wait for them to come back, and then he could put the control arms back on the car, and that whole thing was going to cost around about 5,000 to 6,000 Australian dollars. So not cheap, but a lot cheaper than $20,000. However, my mechanic understandably didn't want my car sitting on one of his hoists and taking up space for an unknown amount of time. I mean, what happens if this took 6 months? So he was like, you can't do this, Stuart, like, I don't know how to help you. And so I thought to myself, you know what? I'm gonna take these control arms off and I'm gonna have to do this by myself. Like, nobody wants to help me unless I want to spend in the realms of like $25,000 taking control arms off and getting them replaced. There's really no solution to this other than just doing this whole thing by myself. And I really didn't mind, because I wanted to be a good mechanic. I wanted to learn how to be a good mechanic. I have no background in mechanics. I'm not a mechanic by trade. I'm an accountant, I'm a dating coach, and I'm a counselor by trade. So I have no kind of like formal background in mechanics. But I've always been interested in cars. I've always had a deep interest in cars. So I thought, you know, I'm not getting any younger, I might as well start learning this stuff. So I decided to give it a go by myself. So this leads me to buying a BendPak QuickJack. Now, it has to be said that the agents for BendPak in Australia, their customer service is exemplary. They made the whole purchasing of the QuickJack and getting it sent to me extremely easy. So up it went on the hoist. It had been living on the hoist for a couple of weeks, and it seemed happy up there. You know, everything seemed to be fine. I had put the thing together as per the instructions, and it all seemed to be working just fine. And at this stage, right now, I had taken off 3 of the 4 shock absorbers. I'd removed 3 of the 4 shock absorbers, and I was, you know, I was doing quite well. I was on schedule. Things were going fine. I had a lot of confidence that I could actually do this. So now it gets to the exciting part. We're about 2-3 weeks into the whole project. As I said, I've taken off 3 of the shock absorbers. I'm working on the 4th one, the front left-hand shock absorber. I'd taken out the ABS pump and I was working on the car. And what I'd done is I put a jack underneath the front disc brake just to kind of like make sure that when I took the shock absorber out that the disc didn't just fall on the ground. So there wasn't any pressure from the jack on the disc brake. It was just like there to stop the disc brake from falling down. And as I'm doing this, I'm working on the final bolt to take this thing out, and I started hearing like a groaning noise. I stood up from where I was as I was sitting down, and I stood up and I looked at the car, and the car was on this like crazy weird angle. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? And like the creaking kind of like got louder and louder, and I realized, oh shit, like the car's falling down on the other side, the opposite side to me. It was like tilting over. And I was like, I just flew into a panic. There's no other way to describe it. I flew into an absolute panic. I grabbed the nearest jack that I had to me, the jack that is now caught underneath the car, and you'll see it in the video. I tried to jack that thing up, but it was too late. The angle that the car was on was on a crazy angle, almost like 45 degrees at this stage, and I just knew that the car was coming down, and I just went, oh my god, I just have to get out of the way, and I ran out of the garage, and about 5 seconds after I ran out of the garage, the car just went crash down on the ground, and the hoist on the left-hand side ended up spinning through the air, did it like a 720, spun around twice in the air, and took off. It started smashing against the side of the car, took off the mirror as I showed you, and yeah, I was just like an absolute shock. This is the hoist that went flying through the air and smashed off that mirror. So you can imagine, what's this thing weigh, about 100 kilos or something? This thing did a 720 through the air. I saw it with my own eyes, and just so happened to land upright. What I was doing with that jack, that's still in the position that I had before I ran out of the garage. I was working on the front, on this front left-hand wheel. I was trying to take the suspension out, and all that jack was doing was just resting very lightly underneath the brake discs. So when I pulled the shock absorber out, the whole wheel assembly didn't just go collapsing down. So that's all that was. Well, there was no pressure on anything or anything like that. You can see where the car has gouged out some of my the ground, the concrete, and as you can see, the car is lying right down on the discs. So yeah, you can see it's lying on its belly. There's the engine. I have no idea if this thing even runs or whether there's damage to the oil pan or whatever. No idea at all. We're back around the back of the car. As you can see, there's a jack where I desperately tried to save the car. That obviously didn't work. But under here somewhere, I probably won't be able to show you. We might have to go on our side. Whoa! That's where the other jack is. Stuck under there. I have no idea how bad this thing is. I really don't. I can only assume that the floor pan is all smashed in because there's a big giant hoist underneath it. So yeah, that was quite terrifying, and I'll tell you the reason why it was. I was supposed to be underneath that car. Like, I had a schedule that I was trying to follow, and I was supposed to be underneath the car when that happened. See, what had happened is that I had been hung up on this one little screw while I was taking off the ABS pump. This one little tiny screw was holding me up. I just couldn't get this screw out, and it ended up holding me up about a couple of hours. Had that screw come out, I would have taken that out, got the shock absorber out, and my very next job would have been to crawl underneath that car and start undoing the big bolts that hold the subframes in. That was the next job that I was supposed to be doing. And I don't know, at the speed that the car was falling down at, I don't know whether I'd be able to get out in time from underneath the car. And that's what really scares me. So this is the ABS pump that saved my life, and this one screw here, this screw saved my life. I guess the main thing is that I'm fine. I have a tiny little scratch on my leg. That is the only injury that I sustained. I don't know how much damage is done to the car. I can only assume that it's pretty catastrophic. There's a giant hoist trapped underneath it, pushing all of the subframes and the underbody up into the car. It's basically resting on the other hoist at the moment, the one that's trapped underneath. And I can only assume that the brake discs and stuff are chipped and whatever. They're probably... Look, it's going to be up to the assessors to decide like how bad the car actually is and whether it's savable. My guess is that it's probably not. I think this is going to be written off. So the whole thing is pretty heartbreaking, actually. I really wanted to finish this job. I wanted to kind of prove to myself that I could do this. I knew I had bitten off a hell of a lot, possibly more than what I could chew. But I thought I had the confidence that I could do this. So look, I'm not here to tell you not to buy a QuickJack. I am not saying to buy one either. I think that everybody has to decide whether or not it's the correct thing for them. I've heard lots of good things about QuickJacks and a lot of people sing their praises, but I just thought I really needed to let you guys know out there. I had to tell you guys my story, and you can make up your own mind whether it's my fault or not. I feel as though, considering the car had been up on the hoist for 3 weeks with like nothing happening, it was fine, you know, I'd stuck it up on the hoist, given it a shake, nothing, it stayed up there fine for almost 3 weeks, completely fine. And then I wasn't doing anything other than just like working on the car like normal. Surely the thing isn't that sensitive that I can't touch the car without the thing coming off one of those little lock stops. Like, surely not. But then again, as you saw in the video, like one of the hoists is all the way up and the other one is all the way down. And I'd really like to know how that happened. I just want to say that I am no engineer. However, this is what you're putting your life into. This little arm here, this little metal arm. And this little arm goes into that little notch. And this little arm rests in that little tiny notch over there. And that, folks, that is what holds your car up if you're underneath it. So I don't want to say anything more than that, but that's what you're placing your life in, that little tiny notch there. I mean, the hoist is not held up by any kind of hydraulic force when you're using it. It's held up by a mechanical force, like the thing latching into those like stops. So this is going to be an ongoing saga. I guess the next thing is going to be that the car, the Maserati, is going to be somehow dragged out from my shed, and then I guess I move on to my next projects that I have. I actually have another project that I'd like to do. So the whole idea for me is I just need to get back on the horse as soon as possible. I can't let this thing beat me. I spent a day grieving for it. Like, I shed some serious tears over this. It was devastating. I've had this car for like 12 years. The car has been in my life for 12 years. I feel as though it's like breaking up with a toxic girlfriend, a toxic abusive girlfriend. It's like I'm absolutely heartbroken by the whole thing. But by the same token, there's a part of me that's relieved. So if you're interested, there'll be other updates on how this goes. I'm just trying to document everything that happens. I'm really not too sure what happens from here. I don't know if any litigation is going to be taking place or whatever. I don't know. I honestly have no idea what's going to happen next. I don't know what I'm going to replace this car with. I don't know if I can replace this car with anything, to be honest. But yeah, I guess I'll just keep on keeping on, as they say. And yeah, you know, I am just happy to be alive, to be honest. It really made me feel as though like I had dodged a bullet, and some guiding spirit was looking out for me or something, because yeah, I could have been underneath that car. So I guess the moral of this story is just, you know, as they always say, be grateful for every moment that you're alive, and all that kind of stuff that you hear every coach say or whatever. But I really felt as though this whole thing has given that saying some extra gravitas. So yeah, look, I'm going to sign off for now. I think I've been rambling long enough, and yeah, I'll keep you all up to date on what happens next with this whole saga.